At 4 o'clock in the morning on September 5th, 1889, loud ringing bells and cries of fire woke the residents of Moore County, North Carolina. Men, women, and children came running to see the damage. The Moore County courthouse was burning to the ground. There was no fire department to put out the sheets of flames that surrounded the registrar's office. A man named Matthew Cagle originally raised the alarm and said that a couple of hours before the fire broke out, he noticed a light about as large as a candle in the Register of Deeds office. He didn't think much of it and went to sleep. He woke up to his son yelling to him that the courthouse was on fire. Matthew ran to the registrar's office and pushed open the door and saw a large pile of books burning rapidly as if doused with oil or turpentine. When he ran to the well to get a bucket of water to extinguish the flames, he found the rope to the bucket cut and the bucket in the bottom of the well. The courthouse, which was practically new and had undergone extensive renovation 2 years earlier, was completely destroyed. Obviously, the work of an arsonist who probably wanted to get rid of some court record or evidence against himself. Every paper and book in the registrar's office was destroyed, including 89 tax books. Other destroyed records include over 500 judgment rolls from various court cases, all the probate and wills, most of the old court minute books, all the guardian books, all the bonds, all the Supreme Court reports and acts of legislature. This includes all the deed books. So we don't know exactly when Chris Tyson's fourth great-grandfather, Andrew Jackson Hunsucker, purchased the land that he owned in 1850 because all of the records of his land purchase were destroyed in the courthouse fire. Courthouse fires seem to happen a lot a long time ago, especially during the Civil War, but courthouses were also destroyed by tornadoes and sometimes arsonists. By 1860, Andrew and his family moved southwest to Lylesville in Anson County, North Carolina. Andrew, who was born about 1818 in North Carolina, didn't appear to own any land in 1860, and he was working as a railroad hand to provide for his growing family, which included 9 children. 2 years after the 1860 census enumeration, on July 7th, 1862, Andrew enlisted as a private in the Confederate cavalry in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. North Carolina was somewhat divided when it came to the Civil War. While a majority of the Confederate Army's manpower came from North Carolina, about 8,000 men enlisted in the Union Army, including 5,000 African Americans as members of the United States Colored Troops. The Civil War was really hard on poor white families like Andrew's. They didn't own land or slaves, and high inflation made it hard for them to buy basic necessities. North Carolina was one of 2 states who appropriated funds to the families of poor soldiers by taxing large landowners. This led to a high rate of desertions among North Carolina troops who felt like they needed to come home and take care of their families. Andrew wasn't a deserter, and he served in the 4th Cavalry in Company E. Just shy of the first year of his 3-year service commitment, Andrew was captured as a prisoner of war. Andrew and his regiment fought the Union in the battle in Upperville, Virginia on June 21st, 1863. The Union had more than double the number of Confederate forces, 7,000 to 3,200. As the fighting commenced, 180 Confederate soldiers and 209 Union soldiers lost their lives. Many Confederate soldiers, including Andrew, were taken as prisoners of war and marched to the old Capitol Prison in Washington, D.C. In its earlier days, the prison had served as the temporary capital of the United States from 1815 to 1819 and was known as the Old Brick Capitol. After the original Capitol building was rebuilt, the building was used as a private school and then a boarding house until the Union repurchased the building in 1861 to serve as a prison for captured Confederate soldiers, spies, and others. The original building was razed and is now the site of the U.S. Supreme Court building. Andrew was imprisoned for a little over a month and was exchanged for Union prisoners on July 30th, 1863. About 3 weeks later, he was admitted to the Winder Hospital in Richmond, Virginia. It was the largest hospital in the Confederacy. When it opened, it had capacity for 3,000 and quickly expanded to 4,300 patients. There were 98 buildings and a tent that could contain 700 patients. Andrew was discharged from service in August 1864 and returned home to his family. They picked up and moved again and settled in Mallard Creek in Mecklenburg County by 1870. Andrew and 2 of his sons worked as farmhands and didn't own any land. Between 1870 and 1880, the family moved again, relocating in Misenheimer's Cabarrus County, North Carolina. Andrew died before 1897. So Chris has more in common with his ancestor Andrew than he probably realized. However, while Chris spent 24 hours in jail with Mr. Beast and his pals, Andrew spent almost 40 days as a Confederate prisoner, and I doubt he got Bojangles for breakfast. So if you learned something new, give this video a like, and if you want to be the first to know about the next story, make sure you subscribe.